Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. So I would like to first introduce our first speakers. We have Dr. Blanca Suarez, who is the MSCA National Contact Point. Her familiarity with the MSCA programs is derived from her own experience as the MSCA Doctoral Network candidate at the University of Bamberg in Germany during her doctoral studies. With over 20 years experience in project and account management across both Ireland and Spain, Blanca's professional experience encompasses a diverse range of roles in industry and academia. We have Dr. Jane Carrigan, who is the interim head of the Irish MSCA Postdoctoral Actions and has been an MSCA national contact point since January 22 and is currently Ireland's MSCA national delegate. She is passionate about research and supporting researchers. She has over 20 years experience of working in higher education in Ireland, firstly as an academic, program director and module coordinator for both undergrad and postgraduate programs, and in more recent years in research administrations. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Blanca and Dr. Jane.
Thank you, Huda. So without much ado, I'm just going to start this presentation. I just wanted to say the Irish Marie Skłodowska-Curie office is supported by Research Ireland and operated under a joint partnership with the Irish Universities Association. And our mission is to support the research community in Ireland across all disciplines and sectors in both applying to MSCA funding and implementing MSCA projects. And we are delighted to be here this morning and to see so many of you here. So let's start. First, a quick run through of our agenda this afternoon. So as Huda was mentioning, we're going to be covering the types of fellowships, eligibility criteria, practicalities of preparing your application, the evaluation criteria, and how are the proposals evaluated, and finishing up with tips on writing a successful proposal and sharing some resources that will help you along. So postdoctoral fellowships support excellent projects in all disciplines. So the objectives of the call go beyond an excellent research project. They include a focus on the career development of the researcher in terms of transferable skills and training, as well as a focus on the 3 I's, and this is really important: international, intersectoral, and interdisciplinary mobility. And this means it's not only about the research. It's important that you address the objectives of the call in your applications. And remember, you must have a designated supervisor employed in a host organization to apply. As you know, the call is already open and it will close on the 10th of September. My advice is to try to submit before the deadline. Now we're going on to the types of fellowships. So there are 2 types of fellowships. European fellowships are open to all nationalities, and they involve a researcher coming to an institution in an EU member state or Horizon Europe associated country for up to 24 months. The researcher then is coming to a university in Ireland. And in the global fellowship, a national or long-term resident from an EU member state or associated country spends up to 2 years in an institution in a third country, for example, Australia or Japan, and then returns to their host organization in an EU member state or associated country. For example, they return to a university in Ireland for a 12-month return phase. Proposals are accepted. Proposals are accepted in all fields of research, and the proposals are submitted to one of 8 scientific panels. So researchers can opt to undergo secondments or placements to another organization in any sector and in any country worldwide. For a European fellowship, secondments can take place at any time during the project, but for global fellowships, secondments are permitted only during the outgoing phase. Applicants can opt to include a non-academic placement or NAP, which takes place at the end of the fellowship, where they can spend up to 6 months extra in a non-academic organization based in a member state or an associated country. It is important to note that if you are planning a secondment or NAP, these have to make sense for your project. They should be described in the proposal, and their relevance and quality or added value will be assessed by the evaluators. So check out the guide for applicants for advice on how to encode secondments and placement. And the link is provided here and in the slides that you will get. So next, eligibility. So and you can see here in the summary table, there's some criteria that researchers should comply with in terms of nationality, mobility, qualifications, research experience, and resubmission for those resubmitting. And I've included a link to the self-assessment tool in case you need to check if you're eligible regarding the maximum 8 years research experience criteria. So there's also eligibility criteria for the host institution, which must be a legal entity located in an EU member state or associated country. The host institution is responsible for the proper implementation of the actions, so the research, transfer of knowledge, and training activities. They sign the grant agreement, and they receive the funding and hire the researcher. It's important to identify and avail of everything you may need in terms of research and admin infrastructure to develop and implement your project. The supervisor, on the other hand, is responsible for the researcher and the co-development of the researcher's career development plan. They should contribute actively to the preparation and submission of the proposal. And it's important to note that the level of supervision will be evaluated. So you need to highlight in particular if the supervisor has an international career with experience in implementing EU projects. And you can check out the guidelines on supervision to help you with this section. And let me take you through some of the practicalities of preparing your application. There's lots of resources to help with the proposal, and here I will highlight some of the key ones. Most queries can be answered by checking the call documents. This is the work program, the guide for applicants, and the proposal template, and I've included links here. There's also guidance on selecting the correct keywords, and this is really important. We'll get to that in a minute. And here's a link to the PF evaluation form as well, and to the FAQ pages. So my advice is to get organized with the call documents. I save them in a file so you have the information to hand and you're not searching for the items later. If you haven't done so already, download Part B templates from the proposal and make sure you're working, this is for the resubmissions, make sure you're working on the correct 2025 template. Start your submission early because you need to get to grips with the portal and time is now on your side. Don't leave it. The application is submitted through the Funding and Tenders portal and is composed on two parts. Part A, which you will complete online on the portal, and Part B is uploaded then onto the portal in two separate PDF files, B1 and B2. You make sure you have your host organization PIC number. A PIC number is their participant identification code, and you can search for it on the portal, but we recommend you contact your host organization's research office to let them know that you will be applying for the call, and also you can confirm the correct PIC number with them. So let's have a closer look at the application. Part A, as I was saying, is for general information related to the proposal and information about the participants. So this is the researcher, the supervisor, and the host organization. And Part B consists of parts B1 and B2 that must be uploaded as separate PDF files. Part B is the core of the proposal. It addresses the excellence, impact, and implementation aspects, and these are the aspects to be evaluated. This is the part that I will dedicate more time to today. Part P2 contains the applicant's researcher CV, information on the host organization, additional ethics, letter of commitment if it's a global fellowship, and space to address generative AI if that's relevant. There is no limit for this part, but there are guidelines that are given. Proposals are submitted to one of 8 scientific panels. These and the keywords you choose are used by the Commission to select the evaluators that best align with your project. So my advice is to consider them carefully, check the guidance I refer to in the resources slides, and consult with your supervisor. The first 3 descriptors or keywords are linked to the panel or scientific area you selected, and the others are unrestricted. Now we're continuing with Part B and the evaluation criteria. The evaluation criteria mirrors the proposal template and also the evaluation form that the expert evaluators get. As you can see in this table, there are 3 main criteria: excellence, impact, and implementation. And each criteria or section also has some sub-criteria. We will go through this in more detail in the next few slides. Each criteria is scored out of 5, but there are different weighting for each criteria. Excellence is weighted at 50, so the highest, but impact at 30% and implementation at 20% are also important. This is a very competitive call, so you need to score high in all criteria. My advice is to try to visualize all the elements in Part B1 and think about what you want to address before you get writing. There's a lot to be covered, and you only have 10 pages. So this means you have to be to the point when you write. And remember, it's not only about the research. Training and career development are also important, as is international, interdisciplinary, and intersectoral mobility. So highlighted green here is the problem or challenge that you will be addressing. And another way to think about this is, why should the EU fund this research? So you need to convince the evaluator from the start on the importance of your research and why it should be funded. And remember, there's 3 sections: excellence, impact, and implementation, and you need to score very highly in all sections. All 3 criteria, as I was saying, are important, but if you don't score highly in excellence, which is in green here, the 50%, you won't get funded. So I have highlighted the main elements in this section, which are the objectives and the state of the art, methodology, the quality of supervision and training and transfer of knowledge, and your professional experience, your competencies, and your skills. You need to address all these elements. This section should be approximately 5 pages, and our tip is to work with your supervisor in developing the excellence section. So right from the start, make your case as to why this project should be funded. Really excite the evaluator in this opening section. So what's the overall aim? What will be your main research objective? And include research sub-objectives so the evaluators can easily follow your rationale. So what's the hook? Provide a context for your research. Why now? Specify why is it important and break it down. Think about the impact that it will have. Give details on who, where, what, and why. So who refers to you as a researcher and your supervisor. Is your supervisor a leader in the field? The where, obviously, is about the host organization. Is this known for such research? And if so, you mention it here. Just a couple of lines because you don't have a lot of space. If you're including a secondment or a non-academic placement, you can also mention it briefly in the introduction. You need to make a compelling case as to why this research is needed. The research objectives are like the foundations of a house, and I stole this from my colleague Jane. If they're not strong, your house may crack and fall down. So make sure the research objectives are clear, they're focused, and they're upfront. Make sure they relate to the state of the art, and they're measurable and verifiable, achievable. So this means that you actually can do what you say you're doing to do in the time you have. To save space later, number your research objectives. Link the objectives to a work package. So for example, research objective 1 will be linked to WP1. And get colleagues to read your proposal. So you need to make sure that the science is sound and that the evaluators will understand what you're trying to convey. In the methodology section, you can include, for example, the objectives of the research work packages and detail the methodological steps you will have to carry out this research work package or specific task. So in other words, you need to tell the evaluators what's involved in terms of methods. When are the different methodological steps planned? Be specific. Where are you going to do the research? Does the place have appropriate infrastructure or equipment? With whom? In the methodology section, I would expect to see names of your supervisors, your host, and any collaborators. Again, don't forget to include any foreseeable challenges and how you plan to overcome them. The methodology should be really detailed, so no vague sentence here. And within the methodology section, you'll have to address interdisciplinarity. This section can be used to show how your research goes beyond what could be seen as strictly your discipline. So you could be referring to methods, supervision, or access to different mentors, or your dissemination plan. So is the proposal intersectoral in its impact? Will it target policymakers? Secondments could be a way to introduce interdisciplinarity here. And it's important in this section to clearly explain how the approaches from different disciplines will be brought together and to achieve research objectives. The impact criteria is represented here in purple, 30%. The subheadings of this section are about the impact this fellowship will have on you, on your career development, and your future employability. In this section, you must describe the scientific, societal, and economic impacts you expect your project will have. It's important to remind you that a key objective of this postdoctoral fellowships is the researcher's training and career development. So remember, it's not just about the research project. This emphasis on the researcher's training and career development is linked to the EU's desired impact of preparing researchers for successful long-term careers across sectors. Here you can see clearly how you can start linking the different sections of the proposal. In this case, 1.4 in the excellence section and 2.1 here in impact. But it's important not to repeat the information as you don't have a lot of space. So what's the difference between 1.4 and 2.1? Well, in 1.4, it looks at the researcher's existing professional experience, so where you are now in relation to research. 2.1 looks at the expected impact on the researcher's future career perspectives, employability, and skills. So this is where you are going to go. You're looking forward. The aim here is to demonstrate that the fellowship will raise your profile and will have a positive impact in your future career. And here it's important to have clarity for your dissemination, exploitation, and communication activities. And remember, you need to speak the same language as the evaluation. What does these words mean? So briefly, communication is about both the project and the results, while dissemination and exploitation are about the results only. It follows then that these activities will happen at different times. So you can start communicating from the start of the project, but dissemination won't happen until you actually have some results to disseminate. So for these activities, you will also need to think about and detail who is your target audience, who are you trying to reach. Impact is about the who and the what. To make sure you know the difference between outcomes and impacts, check the definitions that are given at the start of the proposal template. In brief, outcomes generally occur during or shortly after the project ends, and the result of the project should contribute to the outcomes. Impacts, on the other hand, are wider. They generally occur sometime after the end of the project, and they refer to wider long-term effects on society, the economy, and science. A good resource is the Impact Toolkit developed by UCD with input from other Irish universities. And the toolkit is particularly good for some of the videos and the impact planning canvas that it includes. And it also makes you think about your communication strategy. So now we're on the third section, implementation, which counts for 20%. And this section is about the quality of the work plan, including the identified and anticipated risks and the quality of the host institutions. In this section, you need to describe how the work packages, their timing, and the workload make sense to your project. So you need to have in mind duration. So how long does it take for something to finish? The effort that will take you, the amount of work that goes into it, and the resources it takes for something to get done. Evaluators will assess whether the length of the fellowship, this is the number of person months, is appropriate to complete all the work that you're foreseeing in the work packages and to meet the objectives that you set out in section 1.1. So this brings me once again to remind you to pay attention to the links between sections and ensure coherence with the rest of the proposal. And we advise that you structure the work plan into work packages and pay attention to the effort that are assigned to each work package. You should have one work package for management, one for training and transfer of knowledge, and one for, say, your DEC plan on top of the research packages. And it isn't recommended to have more than 2 or 3 research work packages. Here's a Gantt chart. And a Gantt chart, as you know, must be included in the proposal, and it counts towards the 10-page limit. So the Gantt chart should indicate the number of months that you would estimate each work package will take. If you have space, you can also include underneath rows indicating major tasks for each work package. In this example, I'm assuming the maximum duration of a European fellowship, so 24 months, as you can see here, year 1, year 2, plus 6 months NAP. If you are planning to use this as a guide, remember to adjust according to your own project timings and pay attention to the time and effort that you will need for your specific project. And remember, secondments and NAPs are optional. You don't have to include them here. You don't have to have them. But they could, if they make sense to your project, they could be beneficial. But what you do need to add are your major deliverables. You need to label them and connect them to the corresponding work package. And don't forget the mandatory project deliverables. And this is the data management plan, the career development plan, and your plan for dissemination and exploitation. So this is only an example. I remember milestones and deliverables need to be added. Now let's have a look at how the proposals are evaluated. So the proposals are submitted to the postdoctoral fellowships undergo a rigorous review process. Proposals are evaluated by 3 independent experts, as you see here, and they all write an evaluation report individually, and then they meet in person to discuss and agree the scores. Once agreed, they write the evaluation summary report. So the evaluators are experts, but they might not be experts in all the aspects of research. So it's really important to think about the descriptors and the keywords so the Commission can select the evaluators that best align with your project. And that's the way this is what you can control. You can control this. You can control how you go about this. You can't control who you get, but you can control where you're placing your project. Here you can see the cut-off scores for funding and the change between 2023 and 2024 for each panel. And you can see this is a very, very competitive call. But as we were doing this webinars are for you to think about these things and really put the effort into your proposal. So what makes a successful proposal? Well, you need to write for the evaluators. Convince them, as we were saying, inspire them. You try to relate your proposal to specific European objectives and strategic European or worldwide priorities. So there's a new Draghi report on European competitiveness, which is important for the Commission. If that fits with your project, you can quote that, or the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. Why you and why your supervisor or the research institution? You need to highlight the skills you will gain and the resources that are available to you. And again, coherence is crucial. And I'm going to be talking about that more on the next slide. So here we're back to the post-its because I want to emphasize the importance of really knowing all the sections in the proposal and how they relate to each other. This way you'll be able to connect the different sections, which can save you space and importantly, reinforce the key points. So you can visualize this whatever way works for you, but there has to be a seamless connection between all aspects of the proposal. So first, there should be a clear link between both objectives and the state of the art. So research objectives should reflect the state of the art described. You have to be clear on the need for the research. And of course, the methodology will outline how you plan to do the research and achieve the research objectives. So there's a link there too. You need to realize that the changes that you make in one section may have implications for another. So if you're making changes to the methodology, these may affect the work plan. And of course, this will affect the Gantt chart too. The work plan should also link to the milestones and the deliverables. So you can see here 1.2, all these things that we have here, excellence should be consistent with what is in 3.1, implementation. And the same with the training activities. So if you mention training activities, but they don't feature in the Gantt chart, this is noted by the evaluators. If your supervisor is a leading expert in the area, you're going to say this in 1.3. But the work will also feature in the state of the art, if this is relevant. Equally, if you plan training activities in open science or data management or gender dimension, you can refer to them in 1.3 and your training activities in detail, but you can also mention that you will be doing training in these areas in the relevant sections in 1.2. If we look at secondments, for example, you can see how they will feature in lots of sections. In 1.2, the methodology, if secondments or short visits are included, be specific as to why they're needed, and then relate this to the work package in terms of the methods or the steps required. In 1.3, detail the training that you'll receive from your secondment hosts and the two-way transfer of knowledge that you will have between you and the institutions. Will the secondment have an impact on your career or your career development? Then mention its impact in 2.1. Are the dissemination activities related to your secondment host? Detail them in 2.2. In 1.3, you can mention your secondment supervisor. And in 3.2, institutional supports during secondments, and of course, secondments have to be reflected in the Gantt chart. We've mentioned that what's in 1.2 will affect what's in 3.1. The description of the work plan and your milestones and deliverables, and of course, this should all be consistent with what is in the Gantt chart. So you need to ensure coherence between all sections and build in time for a final proofread, not just a spelling proofread, but you need to proof for coherence. Now, just a quick note on resources. I'll leave you links to key documents and resources here to help you along. And the first two are resources offered by your office. And these are other useful documents. In particular, I want to highlight Radiance PF Handbook. This is produced as part of a European project involved in national contact points for across Europe, and it includes common strengths and weaknesses that evaluators have written in their evaluator summary reports, which are really very, very helpful when drafting your proposal, so you know what to avoid. You can also check out our postdoctoral fellowship webinars with interesting case studies, and you can find them on our resources and training web pages. And just a quick note on Euraccess. Euraccess Ireland is managed by our colleague Magda, and it provides the support on mobility and visa issues, and it's a good resource of job and career development opportunities for researchers. So check out their website for advice to researchers and their families coming to work or study in Ireland. So for you who are coming from abroad, this is a good resource. And to conclude, here are contact details and socials, and both Jane and I will take your questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Blanca, for the insightful presentation and much needed information. And we can see actually that from the questions that we already have in the chat. So now we're going to move to our next presentation with Dr. Polat Goktas, a researcher at the School of Computer Science at CIDR at University College Dublin. Throughout his career, Dr. Polat has received several honors, including Fulbright Fellowship at Harvard Medical School and the MSCA Individual Fellowship awarded for his work on AI application in healthcare at UCD. Beyond research, he held roles in IEEE Young Professionals and MCAA, including chair of Innovation Hub Subcommittee, vice chair of Sustainable Working Group, managing editor of the MCAA newsletter, and he's also the secretary of the MSCA Ireland Chapter. Dr. Polat, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Hada. Actually, I just want to share my screen. I hope it is visible. Yes, yeah. Sorry, just wanna. Hi everyone, thank you for being here today. I am Polat and I'm working as a research fellow at the University College Dublin School of Computer Science, etc. in Dublin, Ireland. I'm almost just serving as a secretary of the MCAA Alumni Association Ireland Chapter and vice chair of the MCAA System Working Group, and as well chair of the IEEE Young Professional Digital Transformation and Innovation Hub Subcommittee. Today, I will share my experience with the MCAA Postdoctoral Fellowship, how I approached it, and practical advice you are thinking about to apply for that fellowship and how you can go to improve that process. Just want to share my experience actually. Yeah, let me briefly share my journey actually and how can I just want to go through the process. I received my bachelor in electrical and electronic engineer from Blanca University, and then just want to work on my master, actually focus on the communication networking systems. My master thesis was selected as a finalist for the Industrial Application Thesis Award, and also honored with a Young Scientist Award at the Linda Nobel Laureate meeting. Actually, that was true milestone for me because at that meeting, I connected with a postdoctoral fellow and spoke about my passion for moving into life science and biotechnology. He introduced me to his professor at Harvard Medical School, and he encouraged me to apply for a Fulbright Fellowship, which became my first experience writing a serious research proposal, actually. And then I was awarded a Fulbright PhD Research Fellowship and also received a doctoral research grant from IEEE. That was my first independently funded research experience. This phase shaped how I approach the research today, actually. I learned how to address the real problems and communicate with the diverse stakeholders. I just want to show it here. Yeah, that's the critical part for me, actually. Yeah, have to just want to translate the data into the actionable knowledge and also learn the hard way that you must actively gather feedback from the end users, because you need to learn how to just want to reach to deliver the real world value. Actually, through this pathway, I saw my journey evolve from multidisciplinary to interdisciplinary, eventually to transdisciplinary approach that connects the technology, health, and industry. These kind of lessons now shape my projects, always collaborate and stakeholder driven and designed for the tangible impact actually. Yeah, just want to share briefly and how can I just want to approach my MCA fellowship. During my PhD, I focused on the artificial intelligence, image processing, and healthcare innovation. Yeah, and just also implemented 4 different components of the data analytics structure in healthcare. I developed an experimental tool for diagnosis of the red blood cell pathologies. There was no standard workflow for monitoring of the hemolytic anemia, like kind of secondary disease, at the single cell resolution at that prior actually. Just briefly mention that. How can I just go through the process? We introduced one of the morphologic index. Actually, they just want to adapt it into the clinical side, and they just use it as a clinical partners actually. And at the same time, I started applying for postdoctoral positions, including, you can just see here, Technical University of Munich Global Fellowship, Bullock Wellman Fellowship at Harvard and MIT. Actually, I just received a rejection, but although faced the rejection from that kind of applications, the feedback was invaluable for me. I realized that I need to better highlight my individual contributions and impact, because the main issue, maybe you can ask directly, you have also an issue. As an early career researcher, we have like the fewer publications, but how we can go through the process to just highlight our impact. Yeah, that's my learning pathway from that kind of rejections. How can I highlight my individual contributions? And then I started connected actually through my US research network. I connected with a biotechnology company in Ireland. They point out the critical challenge in stem cell manufacturing. I just want to show here. We discuss some potential AI-based solutions, because there is no way to just adopt it in the stem cell manufacturing. This kind of the discussion points actually sparked the idea for Deep Stain project. With the support of my host institution at UCD, we began shaping into the postdoctoral fellowship proposal. It means that how I turn past lessons from red blood cell analytics to stem cell manufacturing into the new project idea that combines AI, industry collaboration, and real clinical needs actually. And the other critical problem is that here, I also just want to focus on that. How can we just want to highlight the trust actually? Because the main issue from the AI, you can just see here, we just work on that, how to develop the explainable and interpretable AI solutions to make a cell identification transparent. Yeah, this example shows how I connected research questions, a strong industrial link, and innovative AI approach, and all elements that align with the MCAA expectations actually. Okay, and just want to share some my like the know-how and experience and background, because MCA proposals are about you as much as your idea. You can show a clear, credible trajectory, and your CV and narrative should highlight that actually. Here, just want to also summarize some key points, how we can just want to go through the process. That first element, you should find the idea, because an MCA project should build naturally on your past work, but move it to forward, show your next frontier. And maybe just you can just see here, that's the first element is excellence. You should like the highlight your research is not just good, but ambitious and credible and novel. You can just want to highlight what gap you can address, why your approach goes behind the state of art, how you bring this strong interdisciplinary if it is relevant, why your supervisor host institution are proven leaders, and critically, yeah, just wanna, you can just see here how your training plan is structured to transfer knowledge both ways, not only you, also your institution level and also wider community. For example, right now I'm a part of the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Alumni Association. That's a part, how can I just engage with a community. And second part is impact, and you should emphasize your project has a real potential to boost your career. Show to clear links to MCA goals, like, for example, European mobility, social relevance, and contribution to European Union or global challenges. Yeah, you can explain your realistic plans for dissemination, exploitation, and especially open science or citizen engagement. These are like the should be critical parts, and you can just wanna like highlight the impact. And the third one, that's the implementation. I also just want to mention that here, independence, because you need to just figure out how you can just represent you as an independence leader actually. And the first point is that here, and just want to mention implementation. We have ideas. But if the work plan is not clear, you will probably lose your points. Yeah, please lay out the tasks, deliverable, and the timeline with a milestones. And then the question is that how you will manage the risk actually. You should show a strong match between what you need and what the host can provide, for example, from labs to mentoring or collaborations. And the critical part here is the independence. And you should want to just demonstrate your readiness for independence. Like you should underline your track record, how this fellowship will position for the next step. For example, how you can just build the networks to benefit from mentoring and grow your own capacity actually. It means that that's a kind of capacity building side, just a key part. And yeah, the key part is that here, the proposal is not just about an idea. You should show excellence in impact and implementation, and also your capacity side to become an independent leader. If you just keep these kind of pillars in your mind while you draft your proposal, you should want to just focus on how you can just represent your side as an independent leader in your proposal. Yeah, I just want to also highlight briefly here, this proposal more than a research project, actually. You should wanna, actually, I believe too many applicants only focus on the scientific work, but you need to also demonstrate how your project links to research, training, and your personal development as a future independent leader, actually. You can just see here, scientific project and training and researcher. These are almost connected, actually. We should want to just demonstrate, for example, what you want to achieve during the fellowship and which kind of doors actually. It means that collaboration or new project or kind of mentoring will it open after. You should want to just mention that these kind of elements, yeah, to scientific idea, you can tie your scientific idea, training plan, and personal goals together actually. And just want to briefly mention that here, how you can go through the process to just write your excellence or objectives. Actually, under the excellence, you should want to just go through the process to discuss the quality and relevance of your objectives. These are the critical. You should use the SMART, the structure, like specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound criteria. Don't just write the general aims, and define each objective with a clear indicator and realistic target value, actually. And for example, here, I just write some kind of the examples from my application. Yeah, I just want to identify how you can just develop the AI power tool, how we can develop, how we can go through the process to validate, and which kind of metrics you should want to check kind of for measurable side. And also critical part in your objectives, you should provide latest studies, ideally from last 5 years, and make sure you explain how your project will push this knowledge further. Yeah, you should ask the questions like, when project finishes, what will doesn't exist today actually? This is a simple question, but it can help how you can keep your objective specific and realistic side. Sorry. I just want to get it quicker. Yeah. Just want to also mention that training and knowledge transfer and the next pillar actually under excellence, you should want to also think about what new scientific skills will you gain or what transferable skills will you develop. For example, teaching, public engagement, communication, or how will you build up management skills like research leadership. If you are working with a diverse stakeholders, you should want to just manage the research leadership or grant management side. These are the critical part. And also, I just want to highlight that one element here, knowledge transfer. And here, not only one way, that's the benefit everyone. You, your supervisor, your host, and any partners or secondments if you want to just involve into your project proposal. Sorry. Yeah. Also, just want to highlight the impact side. Actually, you should want to focus on two key areas. The first one is your career impact, and the other one is like scientific, economic, or social impact. You should want to also just highlight how you can just contribute, like not only just focus on the scientific value. Like for example, in my project, just want to like address the environmental impact, how we should go to the process to harness the some fluorescent channel impacts on the biological cells. Yeah, that's a kind of practical tip. Be realistic actually. Just want to identify this kind of key areas in your proposal. Yeah, the other part is that the impact, like these are the critical part to remember to clearly differentiate between the outcomes and impact. Outcome here, the direct and immediate results achieved during or just after your project. You should provide some kind of accurate sentence how you can explain your outcomes. For example, publication of open source software or protocols, like that's related to my application. But impact, you should want to just explain what is long-term scientific or industrial or social change expected within the near future or 5 to 10 years. You should also highlight what is your like the long-term effects on your proposal. It's getting the like the your like the real values, how you can explain your project proposal. Yeah. And the another critical part actually here and the communication, dissemination, and exposition side, you should think about and just identify who are your target groups. How will you reach them? Like which channels or events or platforms will you use? Or how will they benefit from your production? Yeah, for example, like just organize the webinar or like the special sessions or like kind of the, yeah, that depends on which target groups you can address, like the researchers, industry partners, policymakers, or general public. If you just identify your target groups, then you can easily just define your dissemination or exposition part actually. And also just want to highlight how you can go through the process to define your work package deliverables or segments. Yeah, you can just see here. That's a critical part. Maybe you should want to just use the, like also just highlight the one of the management tools. Like for example, in my application, we address the monday.com actually, how we can go to the process to track the work packages and deliverables, because we should also just put the communication and training part actually. You should want to just like to highlight the starts in month 1, runs until the project, the end of date actually. Just want to give you one example here. That's a terrible Gantt chart actually, because there is no realistic way actually here. And yeah, first you can just see here, management starts late, but in reality, management should run from day 1 to end until the end. And second one, the training starts too late actually and ends early. And that's not the ideal. And the third one is communication, dissemination, and the exposition activities in that graph only appear late in the timeline, but you should also active through the project. In my application, we just listed 4 work packages and also just highlighted the other key elements, how we should check the Gantt charts side actually.
Polat, sorry to interrupt. There is just 1 minute left. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I can just finalize, I guess, 3 or 4 slides actually here. And that's a critical part, risk scenarios actually. You should also present your risk clearly in a like table. And just for example, this is my style to just assess the probability, low, medium, and high. But keep in mind, avoid the high risk items, because this is a funding program. They don't want to prefer the high risk research actually. Always include the practical mitigation measures. It means that that's a backup plan, how to just manage each risk. It keep your list realistic, no more than 5 risks probably. You can just see here, and I just listed some kind of the potential risk, how I can go through the process, the mitigate actually. Final part, maybe it should be useful for your site, for your CV, and you can highlight your like key publications and directly relate your proposal project. And maybe you should add this short notes for each one, explain how it connects your project idea. And right now, that's another way to just use narrative CV. That's a structured CV format. You can use actually that kind of style. Use the written description instead of the bullet points or simple list. I also put some resources here, and another one, and within the American Alumni Association, they are leading to one of the project PEP-CV, peer exchange platform for narrative CV. You can also check the CV format, how we can just put your CV. Yeah, we have also a newsletter, and what I just put here actually, and our alumni just share their experience or their story, their activities, achievements, and you can check that the newsletter. You can also get some kind of the idea how you can just go to the process. What is the MCA fellowship structure? You can find the details in the MCA newsletter site actually. Within this month, actually, we just organized one of the special issue and just want to discuss how you can just establish this system to career transition pathway. It means that how to bridge academia, public sector, and industry. We will publish this issue the beginning of July, and you can check also as well this special issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Polat, for taking us through your experience in drafting the proposal. Now we will move to our third and last presentation with Dr. Polat Pampili, who is a researcher at the Tyndall National Institute in Cork. Originally from Italy, he began his career in the electronics industry, where he worked for over a decade before returning to academia to complete a PhD at Tyndall. He was awarded a Marie Skłodowska Global Fellowship, through which he spent 2 years at Nagoya University in Japan conducting research on the epitaxy of nitride materials. In addition to his research activities, he's currently the vice chair of our chapter. So please welcome me in welcoming Dr. Pietro. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Huda. So I'm sharing the slide. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So thank you very much, everybody, for registering to this event. I hope it's useful so far. So before going into more details about my experience with the Marie Curie Fellowship, I just want to spend a few words about myself. As Huda said in the kind introduction, I'm originally from Italy, and I have quite unusual career path, in the sense that I started to work in industry after my master in physics at the University of Genova in Italy. But then this was an interesting experience for me. I enjoyed working there. Especially, I had the opportunity to do applied research with academic partners, and I liked this part. But eventually, I felt that I needed to have to improve my technical skills and be able one day to run my own research project. So I quit my position and I decided to move to Ireland. This is how I ended up in Tyndall National Institute, which is part of University College Cork in Ireland, to pursue a PhD in electronic engineering. And then after my global fellowship with the outgoing phase in Japan, I did my return phase in Ireland. And my project is now finished a few years ago, but I'm still a researcher in the institution. And in the meantime, I managed to get a permanent position as a researcher. So you might be wondering, what is this picture here on the right-hand side? Is a way to try to explain what is my area of research. These are salt crystal. I don't know if you, when you were a kid, try to make them. You basically add a lot of table salt in warm water, and then you wait a few days, and then the water starts to evaporate, and you get those beautiful crystals. Well, in a sense, I'm doing something like that, but instead of water, I'm using a very specialized piece of equipment, which is called MOVP reactors. And instead of salt, I grow crystals of a material called gallium nitride, which is a semiconductor, and it's the base at the core of optoelectronics devices like LED or lasers, and also electronic devices like transistors. So at the end of my PhD, I was looking for the next step. So I initially heard about the Marie Curie Fellowship because I attended a seminar organized by my university. And I think this was a very good time scale because it was the year before my application. So I thought it was too early to apply for that call. So I was very relaxed and started to understand what this call is about. After the seminar, then I downloaded the guide for applicants and all the online resources that I was able to get. I printed them, I got a hard copy, and in the following few months, whenever I had some free time, for example, while traveling on the plane, on the train, instead of reading a novel, I started to familiarize myself with the rules and the rationale behind this type of fellowship. And I think especially for fresh PhD student that just got his PhD and wants to become more independent. And for me, it was the first time I really wrote important research proposal. So I needed time to metabolize what is the best way to design your fellowship, which is different from writing the proposal. So then I decided I wanted to give a try for the global one. I had basically all world to choose from, and I decided that Japan was the perfect place because it's where my area of research started. A lot of very good researchers and research institutions are there. And so the things started to become more and more realistic, and I started to have some informal discussion with my supervisor. It was very important to leverage his professional network for finding potential supervisor for the outgoing phase. What he asked me to do is to prepare two-page outline of my research. Then I got feedback, and we sent this document to my potential supervisor in Japan, who agreed to be my supervisor, and then we started the discussion. So the thing really became official when I informed the research office of my university that I intended to apply. This was the following year when the new application started. And this step is where you officially become a candidate, and a lot of things are triggered by this step because you start to get all the help that your institution is capable of giving you, feedback, and they help you to start your account in the portal for the submission. And then the actual writing took me only a month of quite intense work, but is the result of a designing of my fellowship that so the writing part was very intense work, but quite limited in time. And the thinking and designing the whole proposal in my case was not very intense work, but spread in almost 1 year of time. One aspect that is sometimes neglected, which I think is very important to consider, is the budget, the part of the money. It's very important because of the mobility requirement, you need to, in the global fellowship, you need to leave Europe, and move in a very distant country. You have a lot of expenses. If you have a family, this has implication on your life plan. And so it's important to have an idea of what would be then your salary. So Marie Curie Fellowship usually are quite generous in terms of living allowance, which is basically the salary, at least compared with other national funding available in Ireland. But you have, this is a thing that I really wanted to know before I started. It's very important that you realize that this big number that you see in the work program is not your gross salary. Your gross salary is significantly less than this, and your net salary is even less, because this is what is called, usually it's called your super gross salary, which also includes the taxation, the taxes that your employer has to pay on your behalf. And in Ireland, if you want to get an estimation of what is your salary, is you have to divide this by 1.3, and you get something that is closer to your gross salary, but your institution might take some other money from redundancy plan or insurance, whatever. So I suggest you to get this information as early as possible, because this makes a lot of difference in the planning of your project. Let's say the difference, for example, from decided that you want to go for a shared accommodation in your third country in position, institution, or if you have family, maybe you want to rent your own house in a nice part of the city, but this might be very, very expensive. And you need to know how many, what is the budget that you can have. Another thing that I think is very important to be aware of is the part of the budget that is reserved for research, training, and networking. It's 1,000 per month. When I applied, in my case was even less, was 800 euro, I think. And so if your project is doing computer simulation of coding, maybe this is more than enough. You don't need a lot, and you have plenty of money for going to conferences and publishing and training. But if, like in my case, you have a lot of expenses to cover for your experimental work, this might not be enough. So it's very important that at an early stage, you talk openly with your potential supervisor and see what you have to pay and what they can give you for free. Sometimes they have, for example, central funding for running the reactor, the gas, the substrate that you need for your experiment, depending on your field. You need to be sure that you have enough money to be able to comfortable complete the work that you want to do. And then there are some specific that are for the global fellowship. It's way more complicated than standard European track. You have 2 supervisors in 2 countries and 2 institutions, and the communication part is really critical. And you are the connection between the 2 supervisors and the 2 institutions. So it's very important that you are proactive in the communication, because everything, at least in my experience, was around, it was my role to make the communication. And in particular, the last point that I want to, in my list here, it's very important that you are aware about problem relating to intellectual property. But this can be very, very important point. If the 2 institutions, European one and the third country institution, they don't agree on how to manage patents or in general intellectual property, this might even prevent you to start a funded fellowship. So some very important institutions in the world, they are very famous, and so they have very strict policy. They can afford and they can ask that everything is done during your stay there, because you benefited from their supervision, from their labs. It belongs to them. But your European institution might think different. And so I would suggest, if the third country in which you are thinking of making a global fellowship has already hosted fellows from Europe, from Marie Curie scheme, to get as much information as you can, and especially a form with the typical agreement that they have, and then start the discussion with European institution to make sure that if you are funded, then you don't run into this kind of problems. So this was my experience, and now I would like to give you a little bit of how I think I managed to get a successful fellowship. But this is the point in which I want to warn you about the survival bias. And so you might recognize the picture here on the left. This is a famous picture of some statistical analysis done by the US military during Second World War. They were looking at planes, and every red dot here is a position in which a particular plane was hit by enemy fire. And by all this data, they wanted to make better planes. So in a sense, I am one of those planes that was lucky enough to come back with a successful fellowship. But we only know, my perspective is very biased by the fact that I succeeded. We don't know if I can tell you what the comments were from my reviewers and how I managed to dodge the bullet and be successful, but it's a very, very skewed perspective that I can offer. So eventually it's your proposal and your responsibility. So if what I'm suggesting resonates with you, I'm happy about that, but you need to take responsibility of what you decide to put in your proposal. So briefly, because the previous speaker addressed a lot of points that I have here already very well. So in the interest of time, I think you need to start with a very important, very good introduction. You need to remind yourself that the reviewer that is reading your proposal is probably a very busy researcher, maybe is reviewing your proposal while commuting. They need to prepare exam, a lot of commitment. So you need to catch their attention at the early stage. And it's like an elevator pitch. You have a little bit of time to grab their attention, and you need to use wisely. One thing that I found very useful is to distill the main idea of your proposal in a narrative way, because stories is the way human brain think. And so if you manage to distill the basic essence of your proposal at the beginning, I think it's very important. And there is a communication expert from US called Randy Olson. You can find a lot of videos on YouTube. He's a communication expert that helps researchers to be more effective in communication. And he has this framework, very simple, yet very powerful. One problem that we have as a researcher is often we think we communicate our thing with a lot of "and." So we have this fact and another one, there is this and this. But if we don't put narrative in this communication, it becomes boring and we lose the attention of our reviewer. So I would suggest instead to set the stage for the real problem. So you might want to say something like, this is what the current literature is at the moment on this area. This is what other groups are doing. This is a good opportunity that we have, but sooner or later you want to have a but. There is a problem. It's like character of a novel that needs to overcome a challenge. So you need to explain that there is something that a problem that needs to be overcome. And your proposal is in the therefore part. So it's how you get, you solve the problem. Your proposal has to be the solution. So this is just how I would frame this, but there are other ways, I guess, to put this. But it's important, I think, to have a very strong introduction. Then in the excellence, I think it's the part in which you explain with more details your proposal. It's important that you do a good literature review. You need to show that you spent a lot of time of reading the papers that are important. You know your stuff and you know where the gaps are in the research. And it's your opportunity to show that you really understand the problem. And then the solution that you are proposing needs to be for a problem that matters somehow. So if you can quote some policy document, for example, in my case, I work in semiconductor, it's important that you are aware of the European Chips Act, for example. So if your type of research aligns with some general policy from the European Union or from industry, it's very important that you highlight it. And then finally, sorry, the impact part. This was well highlighted before by both speakers. So it's important that the impact is twofold. It's impact on science, as in normal research proposal, but it's also the impact on you. So you need to show that this fellowship is able to give you what you really need to improve your skills and become independent researcher. For the implementation part, my recommendation would be to familiarize with the terms that are used in project management. You don't need to become a project manager, of course, but at least know what a work package, a milestone, a deliverable is, and basic elements of risk analysis. And an important part is that the difference between milestones and deliverables. So a milestone is mostly for you. So you have a complicated, you might have a complicated work research plan, and you need to have some points in which you check that you are on track. So if you need to start something in the second year, for example, you need to have something in preparation. You put milestones because you want to check that you don't have delays. But deliverables is something that you promise to make, like a paper or a model or some piece of research that you are promising. And if you are funded, deliverables becoming part of your grant agreement. So then you need to deliver the deliverables that you promise. So it's very important that you put deliverables that you are comfortable to actually achieve. If you don't achieve a deliverable in theory, you need to ask for an amendment of the grant agreement because it's binding. And finally, the CV is, I think, it's not something that is just an appendix to the proposal. It's an integral part and needs to have a coherence with your impact, especially. And ideally, you need to craft your CV showing that you have a trajectory. So you did already many important steps in your career. You have some skills, but then the next natural and obvious step would be to include a particular type of training and exposing yourself to new technique that would make you much more valuable as a researcher. And then the impact section explain this, but there needs to be coherence with what you are writing in your CV. So I just want to conclude with a few recommendations. I think the most important one would be to get, if you have opportunity, to ask friends and colleagues from in your area to read their applications. You need to treat those very confidentially. Of course, you don't want to copy them. You just want to understand how a successful application looks like in your area. I have to say, you need trust to give your application. So you need to treat this very confidentially, but it's something very useful, and get as many feedback as you can and proofread your application. So if assuming that you are successful and while you are preparing your application, you have a lot of support, your institution is really helping you to be successful. But then if you are successful, then I think in my experience, it's a very, very difficult period. Starting and implementing the grant agreement is very, very stressful. And there are things that if you know already at the stage while you are writing, I think might save you some problems at a later stage. In one thing that I want to highlight, in the global fellowship, you are, in at least the way it was handled with me, and I think is the usual way in Europe, you will still be an employee of the European beneficiary. Even when you are in the third country, like in my case in Japan, I was still employed by Tyndall. And so this means that your salary is paid in your European bank account, and then it's your responsibility to transfer this. And also means that secondment has different meaning in different contexts. So in the proposal, secondment means that you are spending a few months, for example, in a company or in another university to complement your training. It's a very important part. But from the point of view of your European employer, they see your outgoing phase as a secondment, because in their eyes, you are an employee in Europe, who is sent for 2 years in a secondment. So they would like to have a secondment agreement with the other university, and there is a lot of legal aspects that are very important. So if you have friends or colleagues that have been successful in this area, ask for advice how they manage this, and be sure that when you prepare your application, you take into account these problems. And with this, I would like to conclude, just to I don't want to scare you. I think it's a very good scheme. It's probably the best and the most prestigious training scheme available for early stage researcher. And you have also the opportunity, if you are a current or past MSCA fellow, to join the association. And even if you are not successful, the experience of writing your first proposal and thinking about how to make a good research plan is a very useful learning experience that I definitely recommend you to.
Thank you. Thank you, Pietro. We are a little bit running out of time. We went a little bit over time. So we will move quickly to the panel discussion or the Q&A. I would just like to maybe start with Dr. Blanca and Dr. Jane. I can see already there is already so many questions that span from eligibility and budget and also resubmission. Is there any questions? And I also see you were answering already to so many questions. Just for the sake of time, would you have any specific questions that you would like to answer out loud for our members or our participants?
Yeah, so in general, the eligibility criteria, there's a couple of questions. I was just about to answer one on the 8-year rule post-PhD. That has, obviously, it takes into consideration research breaks, so research career breaks, or if you went on maternity leave, or if you work on something that is not research related. but that has to be documented. And there's a great self check tool, and I gave the link on the slides. That will be actually, that was another question. They will be shared with everybody. So yeah, so just go in and check that the times tally with what you're saying, and whatever you put in as your research experience has to mirror part B2 on your CV. So if you're saying you had a career break from this to this year, that has to be the same in part B2. So consistency again needs to be it's important.
Thank you. Thank you, Blanca. Dr. Jane, would you like to add anything to that, or would you like to?
Yeah, I think it's so important to check eligibility before everyone starts putting in the hard work. As our speakers have indicated, it is a lot of hard work. So it's good to check the eligibility. And the guide for applicants has good information there on eligibility. And Huda, I noticed there was a question as well about evaluation, and people have noticed maybe they applied one year and got a mark, and the following year they got a different mark. But this happens all the time because the evaluators are experts in the field, but they don't come with the same life experience or scientific experiences. So they may have particular interests in the field. So, for example, someone with might be an industry expert one year, might be particularly interested in what you're saying about IP. Whereas another person might have written the key textbook in the area and is very interested in the state of the art. So they both have an appreciation maybe of what you're saying, but they're looking at slightly different things. So evaluations can go up or down. So we tried to answer a question there about if you are resubmitting, try and look at it. I think Blanca used the phrase fresh eyes, new eyes, if you can. And definitely address the weaknesses, but don't just leave it at that. So that would be my tip as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now I also would like to move to our alumni, Dr. Polat and Dr. Pietro. Again, for just the sake of time, if there is any questions in the chat that you would like to address. I can see also hands raised. Please put your questions in the chat, and we will do our best also to try and get back to you after that, because the audio is not allowed with the participants. So we would really appreciate if you can just send your questions in the chat. And
I saw a question about eligibility of the Global Fellowship. So my understanding, but the NCP can confirm, is that the mobility rules for the Global Fellowship don't apply with the European beneficiaries. So
correct.
as in my case, you can still apply with the same place in which you have worked in the past, but needs to be in the third country institution. So you will need to have to move in a place in which you don't have worked previously for. There is a limit of few months in the previous 2 years.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
Thanks, Pietro.
And Dr. Polat, would you like, or do you have any specific questions from the chat that you would like to address?
Yeah, actually, I just want to see some couple of questions regarding it, like the few publications they have. Like, for example, they are asking some kind of questions if they have any kind of first author publications or not. Yeah, actually, if you don't have any kind of enough publications, I guess that's a great example for me. Actually, when I just finished my PhD, I already like to just publish 2 papers, but I just want to contribute like some kind of the process actually, and it means that like the community activities or like some engagements with like for example Fulbright. That's also another way. It means that you should want to just indicate your individual contributions. Okay, it should be a great way to just want to show your team contribution, like for example that's a kind of publication efforts. And also you should want to just like to show how you can just engage with the community, like kind of public engagement, or like you should want to just like the highlight. And for example, from my case, like I just received another grant before. How can I just use the establish my like early career pathway, and also just like the transfer know-how and like the yeah, I guess you should want to just like the find a way to just highlight your individual like the contributions, or yeah, or just want to highlight or what do you want to plan just to contribute. For example, during my the Mercury project, I just involved in the Mercury Alumni Association, and also just get a more roles within the IEEE, organize some kind of the couple of webinars and special sessions in the through the conferences, and also not only just the scientific purpose, and you should also think about that way. For example, the equal diversity inclusion activities, for example, how you can just highlight or find a way to just address the awareness of the like this like that kind of complicated terminological ways into the high school students. Actually, these are the way. Just also just form your team with a equal to balanced way. Yeah, that's another way. I think that's my thoughts actually. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Polat. So I may wrap up with just one last two questions. So I will start with, again, our alumni. How did you tackle compliance, gender, ethical compliance, gender, and diversity in your proposals? Because not all the research, what was your case first? Like, did you have, was diversity and gender a main part of your research? And if not, how did you put that or tackle that in your research?
So I can start. So in my case, in the scientific part, the gender dimension was not critical because it was material science. But I included gender aspect in the communication and in the outreach part. That was part of my proposal. And I think to address this aspect, you can ask your institution. Usually your institution are the place in which they can give you hints and suggestions to make sure that you are including those aspects. It's very important. And yeah, this was my experience.
Thank you, Pietro. Dr. Paul, would you like to add anything to that?
For my case, actually, and for example, if you want to just work on the healthcare problems, yeah, that's a critical part. You should want to address the ethical statement. But in my case, actually, we use the retrospective data set. It means that they already like to gather a data set, and we just want to mention that what they just received before ethical approval, and then just want to like address the sentence. And all for the gender balance side, actually, we just want to like I just work with like the diverse stakeholders. It means that like including biologists and the computational bioinformatics, healthcare professionals, and molecular genetics. And we have like the female contribute to teams. Actually, that's also another way to just address the adequate gender balance in your team. And we also highlighted the diversity in training and engagement, like public engagement. For example, I contributed into the event MCA. Just forget the name. Yeah, that's another one is the midnight event. And for example, and I just try to remember. I like the midnight event. We just wanna contribute how just wanna like to address the and go behind from the boundaries, actually, because that's a problem. Actually, culture diversity, actually, we just discussed how we should use it. For example, AI. That's it. AI should be useful, but how we can use, where to start. These are like the great starting points. We just discussed kind of diversity in training and public engagement perspective. Yeah.
Thank you, Polat. And one last question to our NCPs. So after submission, what support can the NCP provide to fellows?
Yeah, so I suppose part of our job is to help support applicants both applying for MSCA funding and in implementing their projects. The large majority of the queries we get is actually the pre-submission and doing events, of course, like this one. But we are available after applicants have submitted in case there's any queries, and we can actively help in directing people to the appropriate advice, and it may be that that's their project officer, or where they would get the most help, or if we can answer the query ourselves, we certainly do so. So there may be some things that emerge post application, but generally majority of our queries, I think it's safe to say, Blanca, are pre-submission.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So now just to close up, for our speakers, what one last piece of advice would you give to the applicants in just quick 2-3 words?
I would say enjoy the process. It's a great learning experience, and get as much feedback as you can by the supervisor. Even if you are not successful, you are learning a lot of stuff that might be useful for a reapplication or for other grants.
Thank you. Polat, you're muted.
So sorry, yeah, and that's the same way. I just want to like comment, enjoy the process actually. And the other thing is that like don't treat your proposal as a just research plan. Show how it is clear investment in you as a future independent researcher, because that's a critical part, and they need to see that kind of the elements in your research, in your proposal actually, and also the other points, and make every section like objectives, training, and impact, like to enable that the MCA will turn you into the leader, not just produce results. Yeah, you should want to focus on how we can go get a future independent researcher. Yeah, that's my actually
Thank you.
recommendation. Yeah, thank you.
And just following up on what Polat was saying, you know, the linking, the coherence will be my top tip. You need to make sure that your proposal makes sense, it's coherent, it kind of sort of flows from one section to the other, and everything is linked.
Yeah, and
So,
just to add to that coherence, it's really takes a lot of time to get that coherence, to
Yes.
show you're the best candidate, this is the best training plan for you, and with the best supervisor and the best host organization for your particular research project, and you don't get it on the first attempt. So my advice is make sure you give yourself plenty of time. The deadline's 10th of September, but if you can, pretend in your mind it's in August and have that really good draft ready by then.
Thank you. And those are very great piece of advices. Thank you so much for your time, for your expertise, and for being with us. That brings us to the end of our time. And thank you also to the participants for all the questions. We'll try our best so we collected the questions already. We'll try to look into them after we finish, and we'll share with you all the materials, including the recording, as soon as possible. Thank you so much, and see you.
thank you.
Thanks everyone. Best of luck.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.